Hello and welcome to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. I'm Chris Carter. He's Ray Fittipaldo. We're your Steelers beat writers. And as always, you can find this show on your favorite podcasting apps and on YouTube. Like this video if you enjoy it. Subscribe to this channel to get all of the daily content that comes out from all of our writers here at the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. This podcast is presented by FanDuel. We'll give you the new odds, ends, and lines on the AFC North Division winners here on here for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, presented by FanDuel. But this is also sponsored by Edgar, Snyder and Associates. Did you know they also do workers' compensation? If you've been hurt on the job, you need to know who decides when you're better, who decides when your treatment's over, and who decides when your benefits are over. The answer might surprise you. It's the insurance company's doctors. They won't have your back. Edgar, Snyder and Associates will. Call Edgar, Snyder and Associates today at 1-800-94-EDGAR because they'll fight for the workers' compensation rights that you deserve. And remember, there's never a fee unless they get money for you. Ray, the defense rose up. You and Jerry talked about it yesterday in your post-game reactions, but now we've had some time to settle in, look over some film, think about what happened in this game. I do think that this defense was due for a turnaround performance, and they did so against an offense that was the most efficient, the highest scoring, the highest gaining, and they took away an offense that had given them problems the last two times they faced them. But they figured out answers and against a team that was, had the best record in the NFL, best record in the AFC, still is the one seed in the AFC. They do enough to make you believe that this defense can turn things around in general for the rest of the season? Or is this still a defense that you're very suspect of could just lay another egg next week or the week after?
Yeah, I mean, I think they definitely took a step in the right direction, Chris. I think anytime you could put forth that type of performance against Jonathan Taylor, the odds-on favorite to win NFL Offensive MVP, it's impressive, and it's reason to stand up and take notice. I think we saw what happens when they're good against the run. They made that offense one-dimensional. Daniel Jones dropped back to pass 55 times in that football game, 50 attempts, 5 sacks, and that's exactly how the Steelers wanted that game to unfold. And it was no disrespect to Daniel Jones, but all the talk during the week leading up to that game, Chris, was got to stop the run, shut down the run. Let's take Jonathan Taylor out of the game, and then we'll put them in situations where we think, it's favorable for us. And they did exactly that. So, rough game for Daniel Jones. It's not a reason to say he's back to where he was when he was the Giants QB, but I just think the Steelers thought, let's let Daniel Jones beat us. If Daniel Jones can drop back to pass 55 times and beat us, we'll take it. We're not going to let Jonathan Taylor do that. So I thought the game plan was simple, but I thought the game plan was good too.
I thought it was. I mean, they put themselves in position. One, they took away the run game, and they also played a lot more too high safety looks. I still have to go back and look to exactly see how many times exactly it happened, but I think that allowed the corners to be a little bit more aggressive on certain routes, and they played a little more supportive zones where you saw like Joey Porter Jr. could jump that pass that he intercepted. And you saw a little more aggression there. And also you saw them taking away the primary reads. And I think this is what the Steelers hadn't been able to do. And I talked to several players about this and what the strategy was going into this game. But after you stop the run, you have to take away a quarterback's first read. And that's something they hadn't done the last 2 weeks, really, against the Packers and the Bengals. But in this game, you saw Daniel Jones not being able to go to his first read. And in fact, as first I looked back, I was looking at the interception Daniel Jones threw to Payton Wilson. I was like, why did he even throw that? But I think it was because his first and second reads were taken away. And he just thought, oh, this guy's got to be open because he always is open, against this defense. And the Steelers were just on their coverage assignment so much that he was just caught off guard by how everyone was blanketed. And so I think that plays into this, is that the guys in underneath coverage could afford to be a little bit more aggressive because they had that safety help behind them. And they knew, hey, if I jump this underneath situation, I know I have backup that I'm not giving up a touchdown, which when you're in single coverage and cover one, you can do that, but you better be really good at man coverage to do that, because that's an easy way to give up an easy 6 points. And that's the kind of stuff that can just rip apart our defensive scheme.
Yeah, I don't know the percentages just yet, but I think it's fair to say they were predominantly a zone defense yesterday. And again, I don't know the percentages, but I don't think they blitzed as much as they had been in recent weeks. You look at, their percentages going into that game, Chris, they were one of the highest blitz percentage teams in the AFC. Now, they brought pressure once in a while. Peyton Wilson, wreaked havoc a couple of times when he was in the backfield. But there was a lot of four-man rush that was in there too. And I just thought, early on, the Colts converted and they went down and scored, obviously. They had 2 3rd-and-11 conversions in that game. And you were sitting back and you were saying, oh, boy, here we go again. Steelers have them in situations that are good and they're not coming through. But just that extra split second that it took Daniel Jones to hold that ball when those guys were trying to get open against the zone was the difference in this football game. You mentioned it against the Bengals and the Packers. Flacco and Love, back foot was on the ground, and after 3 steps, the ball was out. Jamar Chase and T. Higgins were wide open. Last week, Kraft and those other guys wide open in the quick game. And we know what happened with the yards after the catch, too. So credit to Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin for changing. I think we all knew they probably had to change. They went into that game dead last in the league against the pass, 30th overall in yards allowed. So they needed to do something. But I credit them because they spent their entire offseason, Chris, saying we want to be a better defense. We think we can man up now. This is going to put us over the top. Now they had to take a step back and say, okay, we're going to go back to what we did last year. Let's see if it works this week, and then we'll go from there. So I give them credit. It worked against the Colts. Now let's see if they can push this forward and see if maybe it can be a formula for the rest of their season.
I also understand trying to play more one high safety looks because it lets you be more aggressive with the blitz and it lets you be more aggressive against the run. But I think the big crux of this defense, a big part of what makes this defense what it's supposed to be is when they can stuff the run consistently. And they did that against the Packers. Josh Jacobs was not a factor. It was just after that they didn't take away the primary reads. But when they do both those things, that's when the playmaking gets to be active in this defense. And I know a lot of people had been on TJ Watt and Alex Highsmith and the playmate, like, oh, they don't have a pass rush. They're washed. They can't do anything. But you and I kept saying, when you look at the film, they're getting the ball out before 3 seconds. No pass rush gets home before 3 seconds. There was one play where you pointed out, even in the Colts game, where Cam Hayward just juiced his man, but because Daniel Jones saw a guy open right away, he could get the ball out. It doesn't matter how good of a pass rusher you are if the quarterback can throw the ball in less than 3 seconds. But in this game, you saw several plays where Daniel Jones had to hold on to the ball, either because his first read was taken away or they had to throw the ball so far down the field that he couldn't wait. He couldn't just throw it quickly because then the route wouldn't have time to develop. So I think it goes hand in hand. And it does make me think that there is a structure for this defense to work and to win. They have to play it. And I think that they haven't played it enough this year. And Peyton Wilson talked about execution being the key here and doing your job. And he acknowledged there's been times where, he's been out of alignment and he's made a mistake and it leads to other openings and the problems. I think that if the Steelers can use this game as a wake-up call, this defense can climb its way back up the rankings and make themselves a more formidable unit, especially as they get to play some of the tougher teams. Though I got to say, Ray, I know a lot of times when the Steelers win a big game and they're feeling good in the middle part of the season, people say, oh, well, wait till they play the really good teams on their schedule. But I mean, as it stands right now, the 2 top teams in the AFC seeding wise are the 7-2 Colts and the 7-2 Patriots. The Steelers represent half those losses.
Yeah, 11 turnovers in those 2 games as well. So that goes to show you what Steelers always talk about, their turnover culture, right? So you can beat good teams if you create 5 and 6 turnovers. I just want to go back to the communication issues and why I think simpler is better right now for this Steelers defense. I think it was on the first drive of the game. You remember the situation. Steelers had 10 players onto the field. James Pierre came running on, and they had to call a timeout. After that, Chris, I thought it really settled down for them. I just think when you're not late getting communication from the sideline and you're not running around yourself and you're just set and you know what your assignment is, you could play much faster. So I know, like, Mike Tomlin and Terrell Austin had good intentions over the offseason. And why wouldn't you want to change, right? Like you got killed in the final 5 games of last season doing what you were doing. So I understand them wanting to change, but the recognition of, okay, it's not working. And we don't know exactly why it wasn't working. Maybe Ramsey and Slay lost the step. It's pretty evident that Slay isn't the player he once was. Maybe just the newness of everything, right? Like those guys couldn't mesh together quickly enough for it to work just because they were added so late in the process, namely Ramsey, who came in June. So there's a variety of reasons why it didn't work, but the fact that they were able to recognize it and now they're going back to basics. And again, it's only 1 game, but I was very encouraged by what I saw against the Colts. Listen, if it can work against the Colts, the NFL's top-rated offense, why can't it work against everyone else in the National Football League?
Yeah, I think it's again, like I saw efficiency numbers. Efficiency numbers are always tough for me to grasp. I think they're tough for average fans to grasp. Not average fans, I don't mean it, but like, the fans that aren't like the super nerds that read every advanced statistic out there. But like, efficiency and expected points and expected points per play and expected points allowed and all those type of stats. But I saw a thing that said the way that the Colts had played, they had the 8th most efficient offense in the history of them tracking like offensive efficiency coming into this week. Like just the rate at which they scored, the rate at which they moved the ball was better than any other, better than most teams that they've seen since they've been tracking these statistics for the last, decade plus or so. And so when you see that and you stuff that kind of a team, and to be honest, the other part about this too, Ray, is that like, Shane Steichen's offense is designed, I think, to attack defenses like the Steelers, where they want to be turnover creators. They want to do things in the middle part of the field. They took those things away, and I think if they could turn that into more performances like that moving forward, that could be a big factor that gets this defense some bigger performances in some big games, because they still have plenty on this schedule coming up as they sit 5-3, 2 games ahead of the Ravens in the AFC North. By the way, FanDuel right now has the Ravens as the AFC North odds-on favorites to win the division. They currently have odds at -135. The Steelers at +135 right now to win the division. The Bengals and Browns so low, we're not even going to talk about it. It's like 15,000 and 30 plus 15,000 plus 30,000. You can kiss that goodbye. But these are where the odds are right now. The Ravens as the favorites on FanDuel. Place your bets on who wins the AFC North on FanDuel by going to FanDuel.com or signing up in the FanDuel app. I want to talk about this offense, Ray, because though they put up some points, they were a bit sloppy, and Aaron Rodgers was not happy about it. We'll talk about that next here on the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo, stick with us. Be right back. Welcome back here to the North Shore Drive podcast from the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Chris Carter, Ray Fittipaldo. But first, I want to remind you this show is also brought to you by Olivia Numismatic Rarities. If you've got old gold or jewelry collecting dust, you can turn it into instant cash safely and securely at Olivia Numismatic Rarities right here in Pittsburgh's Shadyside neighborhood. Gold prices are at historic highs, and O&R pays top dollar for your unwanted gold, silver, and coins. Stop by their premier gallery at 5833 Ellsworth Avenue in Shadyside, or learn more at their website, onrcoins.com. That's onrcoins.com, or you can call them at 412-900-COIN today. We're also brought to you by Goldberg, Persky, and White. If you are diagnosed with mesothelioma or lung cancer, call your local attorneys at Goldberg, Persky, and White. For over 40 years, their firm has represented thousands of lung cancer and mesothelioma victims. Call 1-800-COMPLEX or visit gpwlaw.com for a free consultation. All right, Ray, let's keep going here. Let's talk about this offense. And listen, normally when you put up 27 points, you're not complaining because you put up 27 points. But a lot of those points were fed off the turnovers. And the Steelers offense really didn't find a gear that it was able to kick into consistently in a game where I think a lot of us expected if the Steelers were going to win, it was going to be the offense. And Ray, if you had told me going into this game that Jaylen Warren finished the game with 16 carries for 31 yards, an average of less than 2 yards per carry, I would have told you the Steelers got destroyed. So what did you see about this offense that kind of got them through the game but got in the way a little bit?
Yeah, Jaylen Warren, 1.9 yards per carry, The entire team, 1.7 yards per carry. That's how bad
Woof.
it was for the rushing offense. You know, they were opportunistic, Chris. I mean, in many ways, you mentioned it before, this was reminiscent of the Patriots game. They created turnovers. They scored points off those turnovers, and they beat a good football team. Now, it's not a formula that's going to work every single game, especially if your offense plays like that, because other than those short fields, there wasn't a lot going on for the Steelers offense. So listen, you know, I think Aaron Rodgers is always going to do this. You know, he's always going to seek perfection. He's always going to challenge and push guys to get better, because I think he knows in December and January, listen, we're not far off from that right now. It's November 3rd right now. So the Steelers have to become a more consistent football team. And I think the only way that happens is if they have a leader like Aaron Rodgers to let them know, yeah, we scored 24 points off turnovers. We should have had 42. Like, we're good enough to score 42 points off those turnovers and not even make that game, that as close as it was. I mean, it turned out being a one-score game, Chris, but in reality, that could have been a 17, 24-point difference in the end. So Steelers offense, okay, the tight ends were involved, but, if the defense doesn't create 6 turnovers, I think Rodgers is right that they're not going to be in position to win that football game otherwise.
And I thought it was interesting by Aaron Rodgers when coming off a win and everyone's feeling good and you just beat the number 1 ranking team in the AFC. First 2 questions he answered, he kind of has some disdain towards the way they played. Someone talked about, how important it is to convert turnovers into touchdowns, which he did 3 straight times. And he said, did we really? We started off pretty slow. It was pretty ugly on offense, and for a decent part of the day, had a lot of chances, but our defense played incredible after getting blasted for the last week. Really proud of them. Thought the energy was great, but there was a good message last night by Jalen Ramsey, and I think the guy responded well. And he talked about after that, asked about the play calling in those situations. He said, I love the play calling. I thought the execution was pretty bad. We've got to look in the mirror and play better on offense, because that's not good enough in any phase. Me, run game, catching the football. Defense played incredible. In a game like that, we've got to put up 35, 42 on the board and close the game out. So good tape for coaching staff when you win a game and you've got a lot to work on. Aaron Rodgers was not having it afterwards. And he's right. I mean, the first play of the game, play action, Johnny Smith wide open, and it's a drop. And it's just that changes the entire tenor of things. Even though they still won this game, what does that do for this offense if they hit that play instead of going 3 and out to start the game? What does it do if Darnell Washington just turns his head around and gets his hands on the ball in the red zone after that muffed punt? Those 2 drives alone, there's your 35 and 42 points. Right there, those 2 drives, you turn those into touchdowns. This is a laugher early in this game, and maybe you get even some crazier turnovers because the Colts are having to be too aggressive. But I also think it's good, Ray, that in this game, I thought the key was the Steelers have to grind this out. They have to run the ball, go jumbo package, bully these guys down the field. And when it didn't happen, I was like, this is a problem. But Aaron Rodgers, like you said, opportunistic. Found, even though Darnell Washington didn't make that play, he kept coming back to him. Darnell Washington had a really good game in this one, catching 4 passes for 43 yards. Cavlin Austin having a pretty good game, 556. They did a good job taking away DK Metcalf. He only had 2 for 6, but he found Pat Freiermuth in the end zone. Johnny Smith did come back with a couple catches. So they did what they needed to do in certain moments to win the game. But I think he makes a good point. This is a good game where you can say, hey, we won. It's good to learn off a win, but there's a lot to clean up, and things that are clean, the things that you want to clean up aren't astounding things that would require amazing adjustments by this offense.
Yeah, it's getting your head around and catching the ball in the end zone. Where Darnell Washington boxed his guy out, he just wasn't looking for that ball at that instant. Listen, that comes with time. A lot of people, he was viewed as a run blocker when he entered the league, and they're trying to change his role this season, and good for them, and good for Darnell. He's earned these opportunities. And what does it say about Aaron too, Chris, that he kept going back to Darnell, right? It's obvious right now that Darnell really has Aaron's trust. And it's not to say he has it more than Pat Freiermuth and Johnny Smith, but he said it after the game. We're a better football team when 80 is in the game. And if you look at the metrics on that, he's absolutely right. When they're in that jumbo package when 80 is on the field, they are a more productive football team. So, good for Aaron to not go away from him at that point. There's still something missing with the receivers. You mentioned Austin. He was good. When teams want to take away DK Metcalf, other guys got to step up.
Yep.
Roman Wilson was kind of invisible until late.
Woof.
The only reason we noticed him late because he made a god-awful mistake and went into the air and the ball was punched out on him. You can't do that. So, listen, they're probably going to sign Valdez-Scantling this week. He's going to go onto the practice squad. He might be somebody that they activate to the 53 in a few weeks. So we'll see if that's a move. Trade deadline tomorrow. We'll see if they make a move there. To me, it just feels like something is missing with his passing game on a week-to-week basis. It's great that Metcalf pops every once in a while, but it's not consistent. So to me, there's a move to be made. I just don't know. Is it only going to be MVS, or is there something else up Omar Khan's sleeve that he's got in store that they're going to address the offense and maybe make it a little bit more consistent and a little bit more dangerous?
I think that those are all elements that need to be explored. As Ray pointed out, the trade deadline is Tuesday, November 4th. So the Steelers have until that afternoon. We will see what moves Omar Khan might make to bolster this roster. Should it be a wide receiver? Should it be a defensive back? Should it be another safety, considering how thin they've been there? Granted, they got really good play from Kyle Duggar and Jalen Ramsey in the safety roles, but lots of different directions the Steelers could go there. And again, it's a good place to go when you're in first place in your division, sitting at 5-3. They're currently the 4 seed in the AFC playoff race with some key games coming up. They got another playoff opponent in the Chargers coming up this week. They get their rematch with the Bengals. Then they're in Chicago, who just had that crazy win over the Bengals. And then you start that crazy run where you're playing the Bills, then you're at the Ravens. Then 2 weeks after that, you're at the Lions. Big games coming up. If the Steelers want to hold on to first place, they've got to keep it going. We'll keep you covered on how they attempt to do that here on the North Shore Drive podcast. And of course, in the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette, which you can subscribe to by going to post-gazette.com. Get all of our written work, all of our film study, all of our breakdowns, all of our interviews right there for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. From Chris Carter and Ray Fittipaldo, thanks again for tuning in to the North Shore Drive podcast, back in your ears every day this week, breaking things down here for the Pittsburgh Post-Gazette. Thank you for checking out this content from Post-Gazette Sports. If you watch this video on YouTube, please like the video and subscribe to our channel. For all of the sports coverage the Post-Gazette has to offer, visit post-gazette.com.